let's talk about just a high level. When people hear black belt, they think of, okay, you're the pinnacle of your discipline. Presumably, a lot of people would. What does it take to become a black belt in this specifically? And what does it mean? Like,
It just it depends who gave it to you. It's honestly just a trick. It's like a marketing trick to keep people hooked. You know, it's the reason why people do jiu-jitsu longer than they do kickboxing or boxing classes. It's a hook to keep you invested. It's like a multi-level marketing scheme. You know, it's like
okay. Yeah,
they want to get
true.
the blue belt. They want to
Yeah.
get the purple belt. They
And I
want to
guess
get the
they're
brown.
it's a cheap belt to make too. Like
Yeah.
it's just like fabric, right?
It's
So,
brilliant. And the black belt has a long established history in all martial arts. So it
mhm,
really is just a marketing strategy to hook people into the sport and make them feel special and validated. But
mhm.
at the end of the day, like you could be a shitty black belt. You know what I mean? There's a black belt doesn't prevent or mean anything at the end of the day. You're only as good as how you could train and perform. So it is, in my opinion, a marketing trick. However, if you're talking to a female that doesn't train, then a black belt signifies something of great importance and
Mm.
discipline.
Right, right.
It means other different things to different people, you know.
Is it like the athletic equivalent of a PhD?
I would say so, yeah. I guess you could have a PhD and be an idiot and I get, but you could definitely have a jiu-jitsu black belt and be completely terrible.
Okay. So, like in general, start to finish, how long does it take to get one?
You could, if you dedicate yourself every day,
Mm.
train really hard, you could really get it in 4 to 5 years. Be difficult, but you could.
Is there any corrupt people who just like give
Oh,
them
me,
out
I'll
or
sell it for whatever, you know, like you give me
yeah.
that enough money.
Is there some sort of like certification process whereby it's like you cross-reference if it's a legit black belt or
Not really, not
huh.
really. There's a tournament, the IBJJF, which is the longest running gi world championships in the world, and they have a bunch of criteria for what you need to be accredited with them and so that you can compete with them or you could have a team where your students compete. But it's a whole lot of confusing stuff. And they have rules where it's like, I believe you have to have 3 stripes on your black belt to give a black belt. Like they have all these rules. So they try to
Oh, so
control it.
there's levels above it too.
Yeah, so there's stripes on the black belt.
What's like the pinnacle?
The red belt, but I believe that's only for if you've been a black belt for 30 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah, but that's like the highest level of Scientology, you know? Only very few.
It's like when you hit the Super Saiyan you didn't even know existed, and all of a sudden you're like this thing that doesn't even look like the previous iterations.
Yeah, it's because it's bizarre. Because by the time you get a red belt, you got half a foot in the grave, you know? So it's like, what does the belt matter if you can't
Yeah, yeah.
train properly?
Huh. Interesting. So like I find this actually really fascinating. So you go from white to black. The transition is how many colors between?
So white to blue, you go blue to purple, purple to brown, brown to black, and then you could do stripes on those belts too. So it'd be 4 stripes on white belt, 4 stripes on blue belt, 4 stripes on purple, four
But you don't
stripes.
need to. You could just jump maybe.
Not, I mean, most people do it for white belt and blue belt because they need the most validation. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Things are so bad in the
Yeah.
gym, they're getting bashed. They don't know anything. They feel
Yeah.
like a fish out of water. That they need a little something to keep them going to feel really good about themselves.
Right.
You know, and that's the trick to keep them in the game. But really,
So you're getting a raise in your job or something. You're getting like a little bit of a
well, it's like a flex. You just got to walk onto the mats and look at everyone below you in the belt structure like peasants, really. That's the feeling that these people are going for, I think.
right. Oh, yeah, because it's like a visual status cue as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's really a marketing strategy. I think that's why it's taken hold so well.
Yeah. So 4 to 5 years to get the black belt.
If you trained every day, most people take about 10 years.
So presumably you, Nicky Rod, Gordon, top guys all have black belts, or is it
Yes, yeah, we all got the black belt.
okay? What about the stripes?
I don't know how many stripes. I think I'm 2 or 3 stripes. You're meant to get an X amount. Here's the weird thing. Once you get a black belt, you just get it based on pure time, which I think the first 2 stripes are 3 years each. Honestly, I couldn't even tell
It's like
you.
how would they regulate how much time you're investing into getting the stripes though?
By
Like,
paying a membership with the IBJJF
right.
so that they can track
Okay,
that
yeah.
you're still a black belt, apparently. Yeah.
Is it harder to get a black belt through like Danaher than elsewhere, for example?
Yeah, for sure. He will be pretty tough.
Hmm.
He'd be probably one of the most strict.
So presumably it means more to have like a Don or her black belt than.
It does mean more, but he also does it in a brilliant way because he'll keep his students who are elite level students below the level of black belt so that he can now send those students out into the world to beat black belts and go, look how
Oh,
brilliant
yeah,
this
yeah,
guy
yeah.
is. He just destroyed
Damn,
a
that's
black belt. But
genius.
that black belt could be a bus driver or something, you know? So it's like, it's a very
Huh.
genius approach. He'll be like, my junior beat this world champion black belt.
Right, right. Damn. So there is like a big marketing component around it for sure.
Well, yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. I mean, yeah, it's all marketing at the end of the day, I think.
That's crazy, man. Hmm. So all in 4 to 5 years if you're going hard, and realistically 10 for most people.
For most people, 10, yeah. You'd
Okay.
have to be really, really good. I think 4 to 5 years, you train every day and you had successful competition results, it could easily be justified. IBJJF's meant to put restrictions on how long you're meant to be at each belt, but
No.
most people don't pay attention to the IBJJF rules too much unless their school's heavily focused on competing in that rule set.
What is like the time and like you said, every day working your ass off? Like, what does it look like to be a high level athlete in this sport in general? Like time commitment wise, what does a typical week look like?
I'll be saying probably 2 sessions a day, probably 90 minutes of rolling per day, probably 60 to 90 minutes of technique. That would be about a pretty good level, but it is hard to maintain, and it depends who your training partners are. Like if you're fortunate enough to be in a gym where there's a bunch of guys of equal level, then that 90 minutes of rolling is going to be hard work. But obviously, if a lot of gyms, there'll be one guy that's better than everyone else. He can train, play with the guys however he wants to. He can go as hard as he wants to, so he can be more in control. So it's a very individual thing, I would say.
So who gives out the black belts at B team?
Me when I'm there, but I'm never there.
So you guys just have a closet full of them and you just fucking,
Pretty much. I mean, we don't give them out too often. You know what I mean? Like it's like,
what do you do? Just like order from the black belt store? Like, where do
yeah,
you
from
get
the black
this?
belt store, Amazon, unwrap it, give it to
Huh.
the guy. You know, we gave it to Nicky Rod on his podcast. We surprised him on his
Oh,
podcast
cool.
with it.
Hmm.
Because we're no gi only, basically. So there's really even no purpose to having a belt.
Right, right.
It's just ornamental.
So when do you actually get to show it off, if ever? Do people put in their Instagram bios like it's like an Instagram verification thing,
I
or
imagine they would, yeah. Or on Reddit, they'll put their flair as black belt now, yeah. Something.
is there a big overlap between jiu-jitsu athletes and being on Reddit?
Yeah, I think the subreddit for is like there's be like 1 million people on there for
Holy
jiu-jitsu.
shit. Are you a regular? Are you just like a
I cruise
casual,
in and look to anyone that doesn't like me and agree, throw in anonymous comments agreeing
just
with it.
type in the search like Craig Jones every week and
Yeah,
sort
every
by,
hour.
oh man.